The ratings are in for Wednesday's edition of AEW Dynamite on TBS. NXT champion Femi teams with the Hardy Boys in the main event of last night's TNA Impact. A big tag team match has been confirmed for TNA Sacrifice featuring Joe Hendry, Elijah, Matt Hardy against several other members of the TNA roster. Moose will face off against Jeff Hardy in a ladder match for the TNA X Division Championship at Sacrifice. Mance Warner will face Sami Callihan. Tessa Blanchard competes in her first match on TNA Impact since 2020. Her match for Sacrifice has been confirmed. Ash by Elegance is going to have to be personal concierge for Spitfire for 24 hours. NXT superstar Oro Mensah competes last night on Impact. More details on when SmackDown will no longer be 3 hours long. Eddie Kingston opens up on his recovery from his leg injury. Several matches and segments have been confirmed for next week's edition of TNA Impact. Plus, Athena will defend the Ring of Honor Women's World Championship next week. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of professional wrestling. Let's begin with the ratings for AEW Dynamite this past Wednesday on TBS. Now, due to Dynamite being broadcast live on the west coast of the United States, some suspected that it would hit the TV ratings hard, but that wasn't necessarily the case, as WrestleNomics and the Programming Insider have confirmed that the February 26th episode of Dynamite averaged 598,000 viewers. Now, this is a 6% increase on the previous week's 563,000 viewers, and a 2% increase on the trailing 4-week average of 588,000. In terms of the quarter-hour ratings, these come courtesy of WrestleNomics. Shout out to them and be sure to subscribe to their Patreon service. As I mentioned, in terms of these quarter-hour ratings, the show opened with 735,000 viewers in Q1, but that would drop to 635,000 by the end of the first hour. Viewership would drop to as low as 497,000 in Q7, but would rise slightly by the end of the show. The 502,000 sticking around to see the end of Takeshita's match with Cassidy. There was more good news when it comes to the 18 to 49 demographic for AEW, as the show posted a 0.18 number, a 6% increase on the February 19th episode, which posted a 0.17, and a 6% increase on the trailing 4-week average, which also sits at 0.17. This was enough to have Dynamite place 5th for the night among all cable telecasts, only being beaten by the NBA coverage on ESPN and the 3-hour block of Fox News coverage. Now, going to last night's edition of TNA Impact on Access TV, the crossover between NXT and TNA continued. Femi competed in his first official TNA match on the February 27th episode of TNA Impact, teaming with the Hardy Boys in the main event. Unfortunately, the NXT champion and TNA World Tag Team Champions could not overcome the system, that being Moose, Brian Myers, and Eddie Edwards, in a 6-man tag team bout. The finish saw Moose finish off Matt with a spear. Of course, Femi will defend his NXT Championship against Moose at NXT Roadblock. Now, speaking of Matt Hardy, a big match has been confirmed for him for TNA Sacrifice. A 10-man tag team bout is official for TNA Sacrifice on March 14th. The February 27th episode of TNA Impact closed with Joe Hendry and Elijah making the save for the Hardy Boys as they were being attacked by the System's Eddie Edwards, Moose, Brian Myers, and JDC, and the Colognes, that being Eddie Colon and Orlando Colon. Santino Marella announced that Hendry and Matt would team up to face Edwards, Myers, JDC, and the Colognes at TNA Sacrifice. Elijah was quickly confirmed as the third partner for Hendry and Matt. They will have 2 more mystery partners. Now, you may be wondering what's going on then with Moose and Jeff Hardy at Sacrifice. Why are they not involved in that match? Well, that's because there will be a big X Division Championship match on that show too. Jeff Hardy will get a shot at the TNA X Division Championship at TNA Sacrifice when he faces Moose in a ladder match. The match was made official on the February 27th episode of TNA Impact. Moose opened Impact by noting he had lost multiple matches to Jeff, but that Jeff's luck was about to run out. Moose teamed with Brian Myers and Eddie Edwards in the main event to defeat Jeff, Matt Hardy, and Femi. Of course, as mentioned, this match will be taking place at Sacrifice. In addition to that, a match involving Sami Callihan and Mance Warner has been confirmed. Warner and Callihan will clash in a street fight at TNA Sacrifice. The two men battled on the February 27th episode of TNA Impact, but the bout ended in a no contest when both men had to be separated. TNA's Director of Authority, Santino Marella, made the street fight for TNA Sacrifice official. Now, Warner and Sammy have been battling since the January 23rd episode of TNA Impact when Steph DeLanda made her return to the company and Warner debuted as the duo behind the 23 vignettes. Tessa Blanchard, she is not fired by TNA Wrestling after competing last night. Blanchard was not fired on Thursday's TNA Impact. Instead, she defeated Kelsey Heather in singles competition. TNA Director of Authority Santina Marella stated that Tessa must compete or she would be fired. Tessa was scheduled to compete last Thursday, but she said she couldn't get cleared. This was Tessa's first match on TNA Impact since the April 7, 2020 episode where she teamed with Eddie Edwards against the North's Ethan Page and Josh Alexander. Speaking of Blanchard, a match for TNA Sacrifice has been confirmed for her as well. Tessa Blanchard will battle Li Ying Lee at TNA Sacrifice. The match was made official by Santina Marella on the February 27th episode of TNA Impact. Blanchard and Lee got into a backstage confrontation that was broken up by TNA's Director of Authority. The match was later made official. Now, Ash by Elegance. Ash by Elegance and Heather by Elegance will have to put their money where their mouth is. Per the stipulations of the TNA Knockouts World Tag Team Championship match that took place on February 27th, Ash by Elegance and Heather by Elegance must now be the personal concierge of Spitfires Danny Luna and Jody Threat. Threat and Luna defeated Ash by Elegance and Heather by Elegance in a rematch for the TNA Knockouts World Tag Team Championship. After defeating them for the second time, they have now earned the right to have the Prissy pair as their assistants for 24 hours. Had they lost, they would have lost the TNA Knockouts Tag Team Championships and joined the personal concierge at the beck and call of Ash and Heather. Earlier in the episode, Jody Threat and Danny Luna teased the idea of forcing Ash by Elegance and Heather by Elegance to get mohawks or wash their gear. It remains to be seen what will happen, but for Heather and Ash, it won't be very elegant. Now, the crossover between WWE NXT and TNA continued last night, as I mentioned. Oro Mensah, the WWE NXT superstar, was in action on the February 27th episode of TNA Impact. Mensah took on Mike Santana in singles competition. Santana picked up the victory, finishing Mensah off with a spinning clothesline. Of course, Mensah is part of NXT, but he hasn't competed on NXT television since losing to Lexis King on the October 15th, 2024 episode of NXT. Now, going to SmackDown here, a bit more of an update when it comes to the runtime of the show. Since the turn of the new year, SmackDown has seen the biggest change in its runtime it's ever had, as it's been extended to 3 hours for the first time in the show's history. However, many people were left confused by the fact that the 3-hour runtime will only be operating until the summer, before returning to its usual 2-hour runtime it's had since 1999. Dave Meltzer was asked about the runtime on a recent edition of Wrestling Observer Radio, as TKO recently revealed their financial report for 2024, where SmackDown's deal with the USA Network was mentioned, and it seems that people in WWE don't know the exact date the 3-hour shows will end. Quote, "I don't know if it's going to be 6 months every year or something, or how the deal is, but they said like it's going to be the first 6 months of the year, basically. Nobody seems to know. I've heard like the end of May, then I've heard end of June when it goes back to 2 hours." Meltzer went on to state that the third hour of SmackDown could have been a USA decision, as the network lost both Raw and NXT in 2024, and without SmackDown, the station's weekly average viewership would be significantly down, thus relying on WWE to bring eyes to their network. While SmackDown has extended to 3 hours, Raw has gone in the opposite direction, as the show reverted back to the 2-hour runtime for the first time in over a decade back in October last year, and their new home of Netflix allows them to be more flexible with the length of the show, with Triple H claiming the 2.5-hour mark is the sweet spot. Eddie Kingston, a bit of an update when it comes to his injury recovery. Last May, AEW star Eddie Kingston broke his tibia and suffered additional injuries during a New Japan Strong match, and the New York native hasn't yet been able to get back in the ring. PW Insider offered an update on Kingston's recovery process yesterday, including some words from the man himself. Quote, "Shit's hard. When it rains, it pours," Kingston stated. "I effed my stomach up from stress and I'm waiting for results. Then back to physical therapy. I got new insurance that cost an arm and a leg." Throughout the rehabilitation process, Kingston relayed he's been solely watching 1990s wrestling from ECW, All Japan Pro Wrestling and New Japan Pro Wrestling, and he encouraged everyone else to do the same. Kingston's return had been expected for this summer, but it's unclear if his recent setback will push that deeper into this year. Kingston's injury took place while defending the New Japan Strong Openweight Championship against Gabe Kidd, with Kingston dropping the title. The match had dual stipulations. The ring was without ropes, and the last man standing would win. Kid has held the title ever since, with his last defense taking place at the New Japan Battle in the Valley last month, where he went to a 30-minute draw with Tomohiro Ishii. Prior to his injury, Kingston was scheduled to take part in the Anarchy in the Arena match at AEW Double or Nothing 2024. Darby Allin took his place, allying with Bryan Danielson and FTR as Team AEW in a losing effort against the Elites Kazuchika Okada, Jack Perry, and the Young Bucks. Going back to TNA, several matches and segments have been confirmed for next week's show on Access TV. During the February 27th episode of TNA Impact, several matches and segments were made for the next episode. For starters, NXT champion Femi will address his upcoming match at NXT Roadblock, where he will defend the NXT Championship against Moose. Also, Matt Hardy and Jeff Hardy will take on members of another legendary family, Eddie Colon and Orlando Colon. Plus, Mike Santana tries to gain revenge against John Skyler by sending a message to Mustafa Ali. Savannah Evans and the Northern Armory will also face competition. Evans would take on Xia Brookside. Meanwhile, Eric Young, Travis Williams, and Judas Icarus take on Zachary Wentz, Ace Austin, and Trey Miguel. Finally, going over to Ring of Honor, a big Ring of Honor Women's World Championship match is set for next week's Ring of Honor on Honor Club. Athena will defend the Ring of Honor Women's Championship against Catalina on the March 6th episode of Ring of Honor on Honor Club. The bout was confirmed on the February 27th episode of ROH on Honor Club as well. Athena's last title defense came against Alex Windsor at AEW/Ring of Honor Global Wars in Australia. But there you go, guys. Latest pro wrestling news for you. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe bottom right-hand corner. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right-hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.